So unfortunately, we've got another unique topic of the week this week that we wanted to kind of move to the front of the show, I guess, again, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah, Fridays have been, the last two Fridays, a little bit rough.
Yeah, so here we go. You two get along so well.
Yeah, is that a slice of pizza or a piece of Swiss cheese on my shirt?
It's I think it's a piece of Swiss cheese.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm just working with what I got.
I know, it's funny.
All right, Patrick, you've got like a million things, so I'm assuming George Perez is actually more up your alley with your history and comics. I should make assumptions, I guess, but how you were talking about Neil Adams was kind of after the fact for you. George Perez was kind of more when you were in the thick of it.
Yeah, definitely. There was two guys for me when I first started. At first you start just collecting comics. At least for me, I just was collecting comics. I wasn't paying attention to the artists and writers per se. But once I started learning different artists, different writers, there were two guys, on the artist list for me, and that was George Perez and John Byrne. Being I was more of a Marvel guy, George had sort of moved on at that time, but I've always followed George. I've got a lot of his work. Yeah, he was one of the big two in the 80s, early 90s, and still continued on until his passing this week.
Yeah, he's awesome. I don't have too much of a history with him. I don't exactly know why. I obviously know of him, and he's great. Everything I've seen of his is awesome, and I know it, but it just hasn't really ever been on my, top 5, favorite artist list or anything like that. So,
I think.
Sorry, Mike.
I think that comes from, it's all timing. For you and I, we were Marvel guys when we started, and at that point, George was already over at DC. So and for me and then you as well, DC we were Batman. So he was Wonder Woman, Teen Titans.
Yeah.
It was kind of like where our interests were. We kind of missed where he was.
Right. So what do you got, Patrick? What do you got to show?
Can I throw this out real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
Patrick may touch on it, but I think you mentioned John Byrne and George Perez. I think John Byrne was a huge George Perez fan too, because I think he probably did some homages to him, some of his work. He may have some of that. I don't know.
Oh, you didn't want to? I thought you wanted to put something up. You just wanted to say that.
Well, it's something that I didn't realize until just yesterday.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I don't have anything.
Gotcha. All right, Patrick.
All right. You want to throw some things up? There's a picture of George himself there.
Yeah.
His trademark. He always wore the sort of Hawaiian style shirts.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mike's got that one picture of his Hawaiian comic book shirt that's actually on excellercomics.com right now, because I love that picture. And that always reminds me of George Perez. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Sporting the M&M's look there. Like I think when we first started the podcast, I talked about, the first books that were really part of my collection, and it just so happens, in retrospect, I didn't know at the time. I didn't know George from any other artist at the time. I was just, picking up what I thought was cool. But, these two books, Fantastic Four 187 and 188, were the first two books, quote unquote, in my collection. And he was the artist on those two books.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. but he started at Marvel. He was an assistant to Rich Buckler, and then he started getting his own work. And I think his first big break was on the Avengers. And after I started sort of collecting in earnest, some of these back issues were attainable. Just I would find them at flea markets or bookstores or whatever. And these Avengers books left a huge impression on me. His artwork, the stories were just cool, and all the different characters. But he was on the Avengers for I think a few years there, working. He everybody sort of, George was kind of known for costume design, and there's pluses and minuses to that Wonder Man costume. I think it's cool, but it's kind of corny looking.
And actually, I grew to love that one. I hated it at first. I thought it was, like you said, corny looking, but then later I started to appreciate it more for sure.
And George got to do a couple of redesigns on Wonder Man's costume, and he's sort of, when you think of Wonder Man, George Perez is one of the artists that comes to mind. There's another great, and that's, we should mention right away that's one of the things George was known for was huge crowd scenes, which
having a lot of stuff in a picture.
Exactly. And that'll come into play in a little bit when he moves over to DC. But you look at his crowd scenes, and you might look at another artist's crowd scenes, and the people way in the distance in the background, they're not really well defined. But man, he would spend so much time on these things, I think, and even the littlest character was so detailed. You can pore over his crowd scenes and just find all kinds of neat things in them. From there he did some fantastic, like I said, he was on Fantastic Four, the two books I picked up there. And right towards the end of the 70s, early 80s, he was actually working for both Marvel and DC.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Kind of unheard of, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
He was actually doing, I think, the Avengers, Justice League, and Teen Titans all at the same time, if you can believe that.
That's crazy.
It is crazy, really.
Not only obviously that he's working for competing companies at the same time, but how's he getting all that done in a timely manner?
Especially, the team books. He's doing 3 team books.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
But when he did move over to DC, I think this is what really solidified his status in the comic world when he started doing Teen Titans with Marv Wolfman. I think that's probably what he's best known for. He did a long run on Titans, and he would come back to it over the years. With just, the covers are crazy. A lot of innovation, a lot of just cool designs. I was never, because I was Marvel, I missed the whole boat on the Teen Titans. I didn't ever go back and read any of that. I'm familiar with the Teen Titans, and I got some of the later stuff, but he just did a lot of well-known work on the Teen Titans. He even got I know, Valor was a big fan of Teen Titans Go, and they actually had Marv Wolfman and George Perez on the Teen Titans Go show, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That scene, I mean, crazy. A scene in the rain there. That's a newer Titans book with a great image. George, there's another costume creation where he redesigned, he designed the Nightwing costume. I think that's sort of a newer version of that Nightwing costume, but everyone sort of called it the disco costume. Another Titans cover. And of course, George was co-creator on most of the Teen Titans themselves, minus Robin, Deathstroke, of course. Let's see, I had a Star Trek cover that's really cool there.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even know that was him. Yeah.
Then the big, when he's still doing Teen Titans, they decided to take him off the book and ramp him up for the crazy Crisis on Infinite Earths series.
Right.
Which that's Crisis in sort of Who's Who sort of drew me away from Marvel for the first time. It was sort of my entryway, and it was a crazy entryway because you start reading Crisis, you don't know what's going on. There's all these characters thrown at you all at one time. You don't know half of them. I think half the people that were DC fans might have not known who a lot of these characters were. But just a crazy amount of characters George, put to the page in Crisis.
Yeah.
Couple of this character heads on that cover.
Yeah.
And then this iconic cover, Supergirl was killed.
Yeah.
Then he was given, Crisis was the reboot of the DC universe, and they rebooted a bunch of their characters. And John Byrne famously went to Superman, and George was given Wonder Woman, where he worked on Wonder Woman for a few years, sort of creating a new modern mythology for her, bringing her more current, like John Byrne was doing with Superman. Then they had him do a crossover series called War of the Gods. I thought I had a picture of that, but I guess I don't. And that's when he started having some problems with DC, and he sort of migrated back over to Marvel and did the Infinity Gauntlet series. Right back into the fray, dealing with hundreds of characters in a book.
Oh, right.
I remember this. I was excited to have him coming back to Marvel and working on Marvel characters at the time. It was like, yes, we got Marvel has this top tier artist back again, and I was super psyched for the Infinity Gauntlet working with Jim Starlin. Unfortunately, he was sort of, I think he self-admittedly was getting burnt out at this time. He did not finish penciling the whole series. Ron Lim took over for him, and George did the inks over Ron Lim. I think around that same time he did Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect with Peter David, which is a really cool series also, sort of telling a future story of Hulk turning into the Maestro. And I'm not sure where this fit in. I think I kind of missed this one. Was the everybody loves this Black Widow cover from Marvel Fanfare 10. I think, Kevin, you mentioned anytime you see these Marvel Fanfare covers, you pick them up.
Grab it. Yeah.
But just another great cover. Here's another one I missed when he was on the Avengers. This was a more, I think he did this later after the fact for a new trade paperback cover, but he was the Korvac saga in like around Avengers 187, 180s, dealing with a lot of the cosmic characters and the Guardians of the Galaxy and things like that.
Yeah, I wonder if when you compare the work he's done with tons of characters versus just like a normal amount, seems like he's done more than a normal amount. Like that's not only what he's known for, but he's known for that because that's kind of was the only thing he ever did. I don't know, not that much of it.
So he did the work of two artists.
Yeah,
or more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Around this time, we're sort of in the image boom era, and all the sort of self-creator imprints were popping up. And I don't have a picture, but he did a book called Crimson Plague. And I think he often talked about, I think in that book, every character's likeness was based on a real person. And I really think this started influencing his artwork. And I think this is sort of when he hit his peak, really, in my opinion, where every character, had this different look to them. And that series sort of petered out, never with the scheduling. I don't know what the deal was there, but that's around the time he came back to Marvel and did the Heroes Return Avengers with Kurt Busiek. And I cannot say enough good things about this series. It was like a dream come true again, him coming back and doing the Avengers, and as you can see from that cover, it's crazy and involved as ever from George.
Yeah.
He did a 3-year run, a couple little breaks in between on the Avengers. I love the team of Wonder Man and Beast, and I love that cover. He revisited Ultron. Some good Ultron stories in there, and another cool cover to 25. And then around that time, I should sort of rewind a little bit to the 70s. Marvel and DC wanted to do an Avengers versus JLA crossover. And George actually canceled. I can't remember how much of it, but there were quite a few pages already started before they put the kibosh on it. I should have revisited that and got the exact reason why that. I think maybe Jim Shooter had something to do with it. And I know, Jim Shooter and George had kind of their differences. But it was, they canceled that Avengers JLA series. The original art coincidentally ended up in Rob Liefeld's hands for a while there, but he sold those pages off, I think. And they reprinted it back behind me there somewhere. I have the absolute edition of, well, getting ahead of myself. What I wanted to say was they finally, I think Joe Quesada was sort of instrumental that they said, we're going to revisit this Avengers JLA thing. And Marvel and DC decided to make some money, and Kurt Busiek, who worked with George on the Avengers, they did the Avengers JLA crossover. It was a 4-issue miniseries. I thought I had more covers there, but I think that's the only one I had. But it was crazy, and that's kind of back there. I got the Absolute Edition, which has it reprints it in an oversized format. It has like a little compendium in the back that actually has some pencil pages from the initial one crossover from the 70s. And I think I just have some miscellaneous stuff here. This was one of my most favorite images he did when he was on the Avengers. I just love the symmetry to that whole image right there. Yeah. And I actually had a T-shirt of that, but I wore the heck out of it, and it fell apart no longer. Let me see. There were just some little things here, I think. It's more JLA Avengers stuff. That's actually an image from the 70s version that survived, and they colored it. There's a JLA Avengers image he did for Wizard, which I think was pre them green lighting what would become the final version in the 90s. And I ran through them all. The one thing I wanted to say was that I did get to meet George a number of times. He was a frequent guest at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con. There's a cover from the 10th anniversary program cover there. He was always super, super nice. He was, if you never got to meet him, he was loud and boisterous. You could hear his laugh, all over the convention hall. But very friendly. He would sign autographs forever. I got quite a few things signed from him, but I never, unfortunately, the one thing I regret is I never did get any original art from George, which is kind of a problem.
Did you get any pictures of y'all together?
Nah, I was thinking about that because of your Neil Adams photo. I never took pictures with any creators like that. It's cool though. It's great.
Well, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit different forever too. You didn't carry your camera around in your pocket. Yeah. So.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah.
So I think I ran through everything. My voice is
That's
going,
awesome.
So if you guys have any comments, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much. Although I was going to say, I was hoping Tom would have showed up, or maybe even Johnny, because I think George Perez is in like their top 3. You know, is that accurate, or am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, I think Mike from New York too is a huge.
Mike from New York too. Yeah.
In fact, you know, Mike had posted. I think I have that here somewhere. Mike had posted an article from Games Radar.
Yeah.
You know, it said, you know, George Perez is the definitive DC and Marvel superhero artist, and I myself wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, I thought about that for a while, and I thought, you know, that's on point. I have to agree, even though I've had more favorite artists from time to time throughout my collecting career. I don't think anybody covered the Marvel and DC universes, you know, is in depth, and you know, had such a impact, you know, on so many different characters as George, and he created so many new characters for DC. You know, he announced, you know, that it was over a year ago. I think it was December of 21, that he had pancreatic cancer, inoperable pancreatic cancer, and he wasn't going to pursue treatment. He lived, you know, year, 4 months after that announcement, and he got to see, you know, there were so many fan organized in, you know, comic shop and retailer things that they organized to show how much, you know, George meant to them, and he got to see all that before he passed, which was great. And people have said that he definitely realized the impact and felt the love from the fans out there. So that was good, you know, even though he's gone now. So
yeah, I'm glad that he was able to see that, you know. And you know, a lot of times the treatment itself is just harder on the body than what the actual disease is while you're fighting to stay alive. So I think it was good. It was a good choice on his part, obviously, and he did get to see. And I think it's probably more appreciated when it's the fans putting it out there more so than the industry itself.
Yeah,
obviously they're doing it for the fans. You know, a lot of these guys, that's what the payoff is.
Yeah. So yeah, another great loss, and I'm gonna have to, you know, especially since I didn't even know some of the things you just said, Pat. I'll totally agree.
Yeah.
What you're saying now too, agreeing with that article that Mike from New York shared.
Yeah, we not long ago. It's probably been 6 or 7 months now. We sold that Avengers, that the Marvel DC crossover. I'm having a
JLA.
Yeah, Avengers JLA.
Yeah. We sold that, and you know, we sell a lot of stuff, and most of it I'm fine with it going. Sometimes you just like cringe. Oh man, I really want that because I don't have that one myself. But,
since you're the one picking them. Yes, it's so hard for me because you bring things to my attention that I wasn't even aware we had. So
and I really want this. Okay,
right, yeah. And then I gotta list it. So, but anyway, that was awesome as usual. Great information on that, Pat. Done well.
Thanks.
And really appreciate it. And again, you know, rest in peace, George Perez. Now.